I've been having a misfiring problem with my Thunderbird, most notably when I take off from a stop and give it gas, whether it be light or heavy acceleration, it tends to backfire. And even during cruise and wide open throttle, it tends to misfire and you can feel the engine shake. So the backfiring problem, the first thing you think of on a carbureted vehicle like this is it's going lean. So because of that, the first thing we're gonna do is check the pump squirt on the carburetor. Especially on these 2152 barrels, as this little guy right here, the pump squirt, this seal that goes around right here, loves to leak. And there is a little bit of evidence that maybe it's leaking, but I just drove this in 2 seconds ago and it is completely dry. So this is gonna be from some other source. But what we're gonna do is crawl on top of the car here, open up this choke flap, and what you're looking at is this guy right here. This is your pump squirt nozzle. You can see this little brass colored thing right here. That's a nozzle and this is a nozzle. What you're gonna look for is a nice steady stream equal on both sides. If you don't have that, you may have just found your problem when you give it throttle, which I have on both sides. I'm gonna do it one more time so you can see it. Nice equal streams, equal length, nothing's clogged up. So I'm gonna guess this carburetor's not the problem. I recently rebuilt it, it should be fine. So the next thing I'm gonna do is pinpoint which cylinder is giving me problems. And you can do that with the engine running. You pull off these spark plug wires one by one. If it drops RPM, that's a good thing because that means that cylinder was doing something. If you pull one of these off and the RPM doesn't drop, that means that cylinder wasn't doing anything and that's your problem child. So I'm gonna break all these loose, pull them off, put them back on. And the reason for that is I wanna make sure they all come off pretty easily, because if the wires are good, they shouldn't shock you. But I have been shocked by these before and I promise you 30,000 volts to the fingers does not feel good. So I have these plastic pliers right here. They have one metal screw in the center of them, but that's it. These are actually meant for clamping off coolant hoses, but they work really, really good for not dying. So I can pull them off and have no chance of electrocution. So I'm gonna fire this thing up, pull them off one by one, and listen for an RPM drop, or rather, a no RPM drop. Get all my extra gas cleaned out here and hope it doesn't backfire on me. Of course, now it's not going to misfire. See if I can make it do it under load. I'm going to put the car under load here and see if that will make it misfire. I can't get it to misfire under load, at least enough to where I can feel it, but you can hear it if you listen to the exhaust note. So it isn't as bad as it was the other day, so I doubt that I'm going to find a problem here, but we're going to go for it anyway. Hear the RPM drop. And then the RPM should pick back up again when you push these back on. The RPM dropped a little bit less with that one, so keep that one in mind. RPM dropped more with that one. Okay. Last one. So RPM dropped the least with cylinder 1 here, and it dropped a little bit with cylinder 8. So I think 1 and 8 I have problems with. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out all 4 of these spark plugs and compare them to one another. Pretty sure the spark plugs are the issue. You also don't want to run it longer than you have to, because then this gets hot pretty quick. I need to clarify, I said this is cylinder number 1 and number 8. I actually got that wrong. This is cylinder 1 through 4 on that side, and then cylinder 5 through 8 on this side. So I had 8 right, but the 1 was incorrect. So I have cylinder 5, 6, 7, and 8. And these spark plugs are fairly new, and you can tell by looking at the center electrode how the side of it is still very squared off. As these wear down, they start to become more rounded. So these haven't been in here that long. Another thing we're looking at here is all this black coloration. That means the engine is running too rich, and a lot too rich at this. You want them to be kind of a light brown white color. Now if you have too much of a white color, that means it's too lean. So this carburetor is actually dumping fuel down this engine, which makes sense because it gets about 8 miles a gallon, which is not correct at all. I advanced the camshaft 4 degrees, which increases vacuum, which increases carb signal, which increases fuel being delivered down the engine. So I needed to jet down this carb a little bit, or put a 4-barrel on it. I haven't decided yet. Either way, the next thing we're going for is the chunks of black, or this stuff right here, where this brown, weird, chunky stuff that isn't part of the plug that I can just break off like that. That stuff is oil deposits. So the black coloration is too much fuel, and the actual chunks are oil. And that oil fouling is what is making these not want to spark. So my solution to that is iridium plugs. So we can see this one is fairly wide and it's round, and this one has a really, really sharp point to it. That sharp point tends to resist oil fouling. I ran into this exact same problem with my other Thunderbird. It would foul out plugs in about a week. It would take maybe 200-300 miles, and it was time for a new set of spark plugs. I put these iridium ones in it, and it's been fine for thousands of miles. So I'm going to do the same thing to this engine, and it should fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and replace all 8, and I'll see you back here in a minute. So I won't make you watch me do all 8 of them, but these iridium plugs, they say they come pre-gapped. I've seen a lot of them not be correct. So I'm not going to gap these so much as just make sure that they're kind of in the range that I would like them to be in. Now this little tip right here could be very easily broken off. So you don't want to wedge this tool in here. You just want to go in and when it shows any resistance, stop. So I have 55 thousandths of an inch. That's not too bad. We're going to leave that alone, and now my tip is completely undamaged, and now I have an idea of what the gap is. If you do find yourself needing to gap them, make sure you do it very, very carefully. Use pliers to pull on it. Don't jam the tool in there and try to spread them apart. You can do that with copper plugs, but not with these ones. Last thing is, don't forget to put a little film of anti-seize on the threads before you put them in the cylinder head. I got the passenger side out. You can see there's a bunch of oil deposits on this batch as well. And this is just kind of me thinking out loud, but I don't know what it is about these 400s, but every single time I've had oil fouling or misfires or broken valve springs or bent push rods, it's always been on the driver's side of the engine. I have no idea why that makes sense, but the passenger side is never usually the problem. It's just something I just don't really understand. I checked the gap on all of these spark plugs. They're all between 55 thousandths and 60 thousandths, so they should be all right. And keep in mind that spark plugs don't need to be that tight either. Just bottom them out, a little snugging, and that's it. Last thing you want to do is break one of these off in the cylinder head. Now, I probably should have put some dielectric grease on the electrode too, but I do not have any, so we're just gonna go with it. Now with all the plugs replaced, let's see how it sounds. It already sounds healthier. I should probably stop before I break another valve spring. Now we can hear at the exhaust that it's a lot smoother. sunny to pouring rain. The wipers are on high and won't keep up. Now it's nice and sunny again. That was an absolute roller coaster of a weather pattern on the way back home. But it's running strong. This fire's fixed. No more hesitation off of idle. And no more wide open throttle misfires.